The old house. The old abandoned house on the outskirts of town had always been the subject of local legends and ghost stories. But for a group of friends, it was just the place for an exciting night of ghost hunting. As they entered the house, the group was immediately struck by the eerie atmosphere. The musty smell of decay mixed with the feeling of being watched. They split up to explore the different rooms, each armed with a flashlight and a digital recorder to capture any paranormal activity. As they explored the house, strange things began to happen. One of the friends heard footsteps coming from the room above her, but when she went to investigate, there was nothing there. Another heard whispers coming from the shadows, but when he turned his flashlight towards the noise, there was no one there. As they grew more and more unnerved, they decided to regroup in the living room. But when they got there, they found that one of their friends was missing. They searched the house frantically, calling out her name, but there was no answer. Just as they were about to give up and call the police, they heard a faint noise coming from the basement. They descended the stairs cautiously, and as they reached the bottom, they saw their missing friend sitting in the corner with a blank expression on her face. But as they approached her, she suddenly stood up and lunged at them, revealing that her eyes were now glowing with an otherworldly light. The group panicked and ran from the house, never looking back. As they drove away, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had left something behind. They all knew that whatever had possessed her in that house was still out there. After that night, the friends never spoke of their experience again, but their families clearly noticed a change in them. They had become withdrawn, and their once bright and curious eyes were now filled with fear and dread. So their families forced them to talk about their experience, and then the friends informed them about it and the police. The police searched for the missing teen but could not find her. Years passed by, and the people in the small town had almost forgotten about their old house. Then one day, on a quiet night, with the moonlight casting a faint glow on the small town, people had a feeling that something sinister was lurking in the shadows. That night, a young woman named Emily decided to take a walk. She had been feeling restless, unable to sleep, and so she decided to take a stroll through the woods to clear her head. She had no idea what she was in for. As she walked through the forest, Emily noticed a strange feeling come over her. She felt as though something was watching her, though she couldn't see anything. She shivered and quickened her pace, but the feeling only got stronger. Finally, she came upon a clearing, and in the center of it was an old abandoned house. Emily stopped in her tracks and stared in awe. She had never seen anything like it before. It was a huge, 2-story building with a wraparound porch and boarded up windows. The feeling she had been getting all night intensified as they stepped closer to the house. She could almost sense something living inside. Emily felt a chill run down her spine, and she knew she had to get out there. But before she could turn and run, she heard a loud thump from inside the house. It sent a shockwave through her body, and she knew she had to investigate. Taking a deep breath, Emily stepped onto the porch and knocked on the door. There was no answer, so she tried the door handle, and surprisingly, it was unlocked. She slowly opened the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside the house looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust and cobwebs covered the walls and furniture, and the air was stale and musty. Emily took a few steps in, but then stopped. She could feel a presence in the house, and it was not a friendly one. She cautiously walked further into the house, her eyes searching the darkness. Suddenly, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was the sound of a woman weeping. Emily froze, her breathing becoming shallow. She slowly made her way to the source of the sound, which was coming from the second floor. As she rounded the corner, she saw a ghostly figure standing at the top of the stairs. It was a woman, dressed in a white nightgown, her face hidden in the shadows. Emily was filled with terror, but she forced herself to move closer. When she reached the top of the stairs, the woman spoke. "Help me! Help me!" she said in a soft yet desperate voice. Emily was too scared to move. She wanted to run away, but something kept her rooted to the spot. The woman stepped into the light, and Emily saw her face for the first time. She was a beautiful woman with long, dark hair and pale skin. Her eyes were filled with sadness, and Emily could feel her pain. The woman told Emily her story. She and a group of her friends wanted to explore the old house. As they explored the house has taken possession of her and didn't let her go. Unfortunately, her friends were scared and left her in the house alone. And she had died. Yes, she had died many years ago, but her spirit had been trapped in the house ever since. She pleaded with Emily to help her cross over, and Emily felt compelled to do so. She agreed to help the woman, and they began to search the house for anything that might help them. Eventually, they found an old book filled with incantations and rituals. Emily read through them and chose one of that seemed right. She lit some candles and placed them in a circle around the woman, and then began to chant the words from the book. As Emily spoke, suddenly the woman's spirit began to glow a bright white light. Emily felt a warmth spreading through her body, and she knew the woman was at peace. The spirit vanished, and Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had helped the woman cross over. Emily stepped out of the house, relieved that her ordeal was over. As she walked away, she couldn't help but feel that somehow the woman was still with her. From that day forward, Emily could never quite shake the feeling that she was being watched. She often saw a woman in the white walking through the streets of the town, though no one else seemed to notice. Emily eventually grew used to the feeling, and she was no longer scared. She knew that the ghost of the woman she had helped was watching over her and protecting her from that darkness. Years went by, and Emily never forgot the woman she had helped. She often thought of her and the kindness she had shown her. Emily knew that the woman's spirit was still around, watching over her, and she was grateful for that. One night, Emily was walking through the woods when she saw a light in the distance. She walked towards it, and to her amazement, she saw the old house she had been 2 years before. The house was lit up, and there were people inside. Emily recognized the woman she had helped, and she felt a wave of emotions wash over her. She was happy that the woman had finally found peace, and Emily watched from a distance until the woman and her family left the house. As they drove away, Emily felt a strange sense of comfort and peace. She knew that the woman's spirit had finally been set free, and that she was at rest. The woman had given Emily a gift that night, one that she would never forget. She had shown Emily that there was still hope in the darkness, and that goodness still existed in the world. Emily never forgot the woman and the kindness she had shown her. She was thankful for the experience, and she would always remember the ghost of the little town. She knew that somewhere out there the woman's spirit was watching over her, protecting her from the shadows. And it is sad that the house still stands, deep in the forest, waiting and watching. And if you're ever wandering through the woods and you see an old abandoned house, remember that story and stay away. For it is said that the house is still alive and it is still watching. The end.